Hello and welcome to the second segment of Part 2, Religious Values versus Contemporary Demands and Government Rulings, in this presentation on the topic of Christians and government. In the previous segment, we looked at the rights we have to decline services for events and causes that we don't approve of. The main subject we are considering is that of same-sex marriage and what the Bible says about homosexuality. In this segment, I want to point out the consequences of same-sex marriage. On this topic, I highly recommend the audio CD by Jay Howard entitled Same-Sex Marriage Controversy. His message is an early warning that he delivered back in 2009, showing that allowing this will open the door to so much more. And he comprehensively covers the many facets of this issue. It's available from his ministry called the Religious Research Project at his website, focusonthefaulty.com. When same-sex partners adopt children, there are adverse consequences on those children that we don't hear much about. The information I'm using comes from a book entitled Truth Overruled: The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom by Ryan Anderson. He wrote this book as a result of the controversies over Christian business owners declining services for same-sex weddings and the Supreme Court ruling that legalized same-sex marriage. Here are a few of the chapter titles from his table of contents. The Consequences of Redefining Marriage. Judicial Tyranny. Bake me a cake, bigot. Anti-discrimination law. Why sexual orientation is not like race. And Chapter 7, The Victims. It is the victims I need to draw attention to in regard to the consequences. There have been many who say, what I do between me and my partner only affects us and no one else. It's our business. Well, my dad, who was a pastor, often made observations and said, you may sin alone, but you don't suffer alone. When same-sex partners adopt children, there are effects on those children. Namely, the lack of a role model and complementary role of the opposite sex, and the pain of a missing father or the pain of a missing mother. When these adopted children talk about their pain, they often encounter more pain by being told that the problem is with them, the child, not the same-sex relationship. There are even some counselors who chastise these children for feeling sad. And the gay movement is trying to make sure nobody hears these stories of pain. There are many, as Ryan Anderson points out in his book, which I highly recommend. I will highlight just a few examples. Heather Borwick was raised by two moms. She says that her father's absence left a huge hole in her life. She loved her mom's partner, but says that another mom could never replace the father she lost. She also gives a compelling description of the difference between children of divorced children and children adopted by heterosexual couples and children adopted by same-sex couples. Let me read a portion to you. She says, kids of divorced parents are allowed to say, hey, Mom and Dad, I love you, but the divorce crushed me and has been so hard. Kids of adoption are allowed to say, hey, adoptive parents, I love you, but this is really hard for me. I suffer because my relationship with my first parents was broken. I'm confused and I miss them even though I've never met them. But children of same-sex parents haven't been given the same voice. It's not just me. There are many of us. Many of us are too scared to speak up and tell you about our hurt and pain. If we say we are hurting because we were raised by same-sex partners, we are either ignored or labeled a hater. So, the focus of the slim majority of the Supreme Court was to grant the desire of same-sex couples while being insensitive to the impact on the children. Even a gay man who raised children with another man saw the consequences and is now against it. His name is Doug Mainwaring. He wrote an essay called "I'm Gay and I Oppose Same-Sex Marriage," and it attracted wide attention. His experience as a gay man raising children with another man caused him to realize that his kids needed their mother. Allow me to read again. Mainwaring had been married to a woman and had children with her. But the marriage fell apart, and he decided to explore his same-sex attraction. "At first I felt liberated," he writes. "I dated some great guys and was in a couple of long-term relationships. But over the years, intellectual honesty led him to," quote, "some unexpected conclusions. Number one, creating a family with another man is not completely equal to creating a family with a woman. And second, denying children parents of both genders at home is an objective evil. Kids need and yearn for both." This wasn't idle talk. It took some doing. But after 10 years of divorce, we began to pull our family back together. We have been under one roof for over 2 years now. Our kids are happier and better off in so many ways, and his family is flourishing. Did we do this for sake of tradition? For the sake of religion? No. We did it because reason led us to resist selfish impulses and to seek the best for our children. But he didn't stop there. He says, "Once I began thinking, reasoning, and examining my life, an extraordinary thing happened. I couldn't stop." Where did all this lead? He says, reason led me to acknowledge natural law, which led me to begin rejecting some of my former ways of thinking and acting. Reason alone was enough to lead me to change the direction of my life. Then, quite amazingly, natural law and reason working together led me to recognize and acknowledge God's existence. And once I acknowledged God's existence, again, there was only one reasonable thing to do. I asked Jesus Christ to take the throne of my life. And I began to reject the emptiness of my self-centered ways. Another consequence of same-sex marriage, at least in the case of male homosexuals, are the diseases AIDS and hepatitis. In connection with this and the Supreme Court's decision, let's look at what the preamble to the U.S. Constitution says. "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Notice particularly the phrase, "promote the general welfare." In light of the example of testimonies we've just heard, does same-sex marriage promote the general welfare? Returning now to the issue that we addressed earlier, that providing services such as making a cake and making a floral arrangement for a same-sex wedding is a stamp of approval, a form of participation in that ceremony. What does the Bible tell about things like this? Let's look at some passages. Ephesians 5:11 says, "Do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness," from the New American Standard Bible. Or translated another way, in the New International, "have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness." 1 Thessalonians 5:22 says, "Abstain from every form or appearance of evil." And again, the New American Standard. "And if morally principled people comply with immoral requests, they give the appearance of approving the immoral action, a stamp of approval. By servicing their wedding, we are endorsing and promoting their lifestyle. Participation is the same as guilt by association, the same as being an accomplice in a crime. By the same principle, A carpenter who holds to Judeo-Christian values should not participate in building a building that he knows is going to be an abortion clinic. One could give similar examples. Next passage is Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not be conformed to this world." Or in other words, don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold, according to J.B. Phillips' version. And Revelation 18:4 says, "Come out of her, my people, that you may not participate in her sins." That concludes this segment. The series will continue with segment 3.